This is Melissa Isaak, and you're from?
Well, I live in Alabama, from North Dakota.
Yes, okay. I want to say I so appreciate you. When I think about my ideal of a good attorney, a fair attorney, you come to mind. I wish we had 100 of you in each state, 10 of you in each state. And I just want to say that I respect you with the utmost respect. Whenever I talk about divorce attorneys, you are excluded from that category. Thank you for all that you do. One thing that I remember hearing from you when we were up in DC, you talked about how your parents' divorce affected you as a child, as a girl growing up. Can you expound on that and how that has motivated you for what you do right now?
Yeah, actually, it's what I'm going to be talking about today. My parents were divorced before I can remember. I think I was a baby when the divorce happened. So I know nothing else growing up other than having separated parents and the contention that's involved in that. And bigger than that, having a mother who controlled everything and having a father who was at her mercy. Yeah. And because of that, my relationship with my father suffered. Yeah. And in fact, it suffered through my entire childhood until I was an adult, and we were able to mend the fence and have a good relationship now.
So how did you mend the fence? You said mend the fence. How did you do that with your father?
You know, when I joined the Army, my father was a Vietnam veteran, a Marine. Okay. I joined the military. You know, I think for the first time we had a common interest. Okay. And there wasn't a threat that was looming over our relationship. The threat was now gone. Okay. So while I was in basic training, while I was in the military, there were a lot of phone calls, there were some letters. I would go home and I would stay with him. And it was, the fence was really mended that way. That there was no social services looming over our head, no more court dates, no nothing. Yeah. We were just free to be dad and daughter for the first time.
How did it impact you as a girl growing up?
I always craved my father. Even as a young child, I craved my father. I craved, you know, we would see him. There's times that she would let us see him. There's times she wouldn't let us see him. It was usually on her terms. But when I did get to see my father, for me, sometimes I felt uncomfortable. I really craved, I wanted the relationship, but I didn't know how to be in a relationship with a man. You know, I lived with my mother, I had 2 sisters, and then there was my dad. Of course, he was a productive member of society. You know, he was a fireman. You know, he married a very good woman, had a stepmother, but we really weren't allowed to be integrated as part of their family. So, you know, he didn't do anything to make me feel like an outsider, but we weren't allowed the quality time that it took to really form a relationship and build a bond. So it was truly more of a visitor situation when he was allowed to visit with us.
So you specialize, it seems, primarily in defending men in divorces. Do you also defend women, or is it mostly men?
All men.
Okay.
No women.
Okay, so some of the stuff that you've done was tremendous. Can you talk about what you do to help men through this whole process? Because most people think that men are just strong. It's the women who are being victimized. But your experience is a little bit different than that, isn't it?
My experience is completely different than that, yes. And I grew up seeing a mother watch her navigate her way through the family court system. And whatever she said and whatever she did seemingly was unquestioned. Everything my father said was either disregarded or just wasn't taken into consideration at all. When I started doing family law, my clients would come in and there were these needs that they would have. Yes. A big need that I saw was if they were taken out of their house because of a restraining order, or if there was a separation. Some men were living in their vehicles, some were in a camper, some were just going from couch to couch in different various friends' homes. Right. They didn't have anywhere to spend time with their children. Right. So to fill that need, what my firm did was we bought a house, we gutted the house, redid everything, and that is a place where clients can stay. Not even our clients, just men can stay with their children if they have nowhere else to stay and get that quality time. Yeah, I remember hearing that from you, and that was just, if we had other divorce attorneys that cared that much really for the parent-child relationship. I mean... Oh yeah, in my experience, attorneys only care about continued contention, and they care about attorney's fees. You know, my firm, we have never withdrawn from a case because a client didn't have an ability to pay. So that's an amazing thing, because do you know how many people and you probably do know, how many people that I hear that said, I paid and I paid and I paid, and after $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 I ran out of money, and the attorney said, well, tough luck, that's it, and they never even made it to court. And, yes, that's pretty common. You know, and all of the hard work is in the courtroom. It's easy to write letters, it's easy to send emails, it's easy to try to have conferences, it's easy to have mediation. That's all easy work for attorneys, and they have their billable rate. When you go into court, that's when you have the preparation, you've got exhibits, it's actual hard work. Yeah. So a lot of attorneys will do that. They'll exhaust the retainer, and then right before court they will withdraw, and the clients are standing there broke no ability to retain another attorney. They're having to try the case themselves.
Can you talk about the ethics of billing among attorneys that you know?
Yeah.
Or is ethics a bad word to use?
No, I don't think, ethics to me is an individual thing. I think if you set your ethics by the standard that the Bar Association sets, you have no standards.
Okay.
You're just trying to hang on to that piece of paper that makes you money.
Yeah.
So, as far as billing, there's you bill by the call or by the email, but it's, if I can send 30 emails a day, and I can literally take an hour sending 30 emails.
Right.
Well, I could bill individually for every single email, or I could bill for the actual time it took me to bill.
Right.
So no, we're very conservative at my firm when we bill. If a case settles in the middle of there's retainer left, we refund money every month. Usually every pay period we refund money.
That's
So,
quite different too, because usually isn't that at the very end, by the way, you owe a little bit more?
well, I've spoken with other attorneys and asked them how often do you refund retainers, and I have attorneys say I've never refunded retainer, which is odd to me because literally every 2 weeks when we have our billing cycle, we refund retainers every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's especially domestic relations can really be a racket.
So I'm going to ask you about a different question here, if you don't mind. You probably know that in Texas, one of the big things I've been working for is not just the grandparent issues, but also the repeal of the unilateral, what I call the unilateral no-fault, basically forced divorce. What is your opinion on that? I mean, to me, it seems like the person who wants to save a marriage, the person who says, I don't even know what's going on here. I think this marriage can be saved. Doesn't file for divorce. Seems to me that person is always at a disadvantage going into the courtroom. It seems to me that person often gets punished because even though he or she does not, either one doesn't want the divorce, they may get the child support obligations, they may lose, they not only lose 100% access to the children, but they can maybe get almost next to nothing. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about the no-fault unilateral divorce issue when it's non-consensual?
Well, you're exactly right, and I think, along with that, the problem with the family court system is it's adversarial in nature.
Right.
So, number one, you don't want the divorce. Number two, you're forced to be an adversary to someone who you don't want to be an adversary with.
Right.
You're forced into that contentious litigation.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Now, why would no-fault divorce, why would it be difficult to repeal that? Because number one, attorneys want to make it as easy as possible for you to get into the court system so they can have more clients and they can do more billing.
I thought, wait, I thought the attorney said that we want no-fault divorce because we want to keep it cheap.
That makes no sense.
Okay.
That makes no sense at all.
But you are aware that, of course you're aware that is the argument, but thank you for saying that.
Yeah, that's an absurd argument.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure how you can keep things cheap when you're breeding contention. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The system is set up to breed contention. It's adversarial, so that makes no sense. It would be cheaper.
There have been some divorce reform proposals in which the attorneys would not even be allowed to be notified for at least 6 months or a year or something like that, where they would have a something that they could bring to the state, and the state would be able to say, okay, this is non-adversarial, and it's kind of like one spouse giving another spouse a warning. We have a problem. I've heard of these people, and I've read these articles from both family therapists, from family court judges, from a Supreme Court judge out of Georgia, who've said at least 40% of the cases were needless divorces. And I mean, I've talked with people, I've known people, and they've said, we were reconciling, but then the attorney told my ex-husband, if we reconcile, she's really just setting you up to take you.
That's right. Without a doubt.
Okay.
Without a doubt. And the hard part on that is you want to encourage communication between your client and between the other spouse.
Right.
This is the problem. That in the world of false allegations, we as attorneys, and me as a men's attorney, am telling my clients, limit your interaction.
Right.
Because that's when the false allegations come up, when they're in proximity of one another. So you have a woman's attorney saying, listen, if you don't take out this PFA, if you don't take out this restraining order, you're going to have a hard time getting custody.
Yeah.
So
they actually tell people to file these orders.
Oh yeah, I have a woman reported telling my client that she was told to take out the restraining order to get custody. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's common.
Yeah.
Very common.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say regarding the whole family court? I don't want to call it, I don't know what to call it, racketeering?
Yeah, it is. It's racketeering. I think my biggest heartache when it comes to child custody is the Supreme Court has already determined that the right to parent your child is a fundamental constitutional right.
Okay.
Now, law students are probably more versed than practicing attorneys because They just taken constitutional law and know that if something is a fundamental constitutional right, it triggers some level of scrutiny
Right.
that has to be applied
Yeah.
before the state can infringe on that.
Yeah.
So the state, what they have done is they've taken this best interest standard, which is subjective and nobody really knows what the definition is.
Right.
And they're using that to infringe upon a fundamental constitutional right.
And that's very, very interesting. And the other day, in fact, Saturday, I was at an event when the Attorney General spoke. And basically, the video that I put out with this topic was if we lose our fundamental rights, basically we lose everything. But he is also the person that's responsible for collecting child support on unjust child support orders, making, a number of other things. And to me, I think that we should be making that argument about the fundamental rights. He says he's there to protect fundamental rights. In fact, he's sued the government, the federal government, many times to protect fundamental rights. He files lawsuits in conjunction with other states, and yet when it comes down to parents in Texas, it's like the fundamental rights don't exist.
I think what shocks me most is that attorneys, judges, and even lawmakers have no idea about Title IV. They don't know what Title IV money is. So when you're looking at an attorney general who may not know,
He knows.
okay, yeah, so this one, I think I believe ours in Alabama knows as well, and that's why he's gunning so hard for it.
Right.
So I think it all comes down to what kind of attorney general do you have? Do you have one that's going to sell out the people of Alabama for these Title IV funds? Most of the time the answer is yes.
Did you say sell out the people?
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Okay. And that's, because our Attorney General, I've known him, I've met him. There's a lot of good things that he does. I think on this child support issue, he's completely off base.
Yeah.
He knows. He actually brags about, I shouldn't say brags, he actually has discussed how much money the state of Texas makes off of Title 4D funding. He knows. And that's why he is so proud, because just earlier this week, the state of he put out an announcement that last year, I think they collected over $4.3 billion in child support. He has between 1.5 and 1.6 million child support enforcement cases. And I know it makes a lot of money. But if depending upon the group that you're talking with, you might say, rah, rah, rah. But at the same time, how many people are being destroyed over this system? How many kids' lives are being ruined? And you know people that have committed suicide as well, whether it's fathers, mothers, children. Why don't we have a tally of how many people are committing suicide, for example, or how many lives are destroyed?
Unfortunately, too many people don't understand the ramifications when they buy into this best interest. You have a politician, you've got a judge, you've got a lawyer, whoever can sit there and they can make their argument. We have to do this because it's in the best interest of the children.
Yeah.
And people buy that.
Yeah.
When they hear that, they buy that. And in researching the best interest of the child standard, I think a lot of us are aware that goes back to Adolf Hitler, that it was his people that coined this best interest standard. And that's the best way to get control of society and of your children.
And the way I've defined best interest, I've said, nobody really knows. As you said, there was a guy that wrote about the United Nations, Article 3 of the United Nations. They talk about the best interest of the child, and they're saying none of the experts really know what it means. Nobody knows what it means. There's no definition. My definition is that in the vast majority of cases, it's for a child to be raised in an intact home with the mother and natural mother and father who get along and learn how to love each other.
Yep, and that's what, sorry, my hair real quick.
Oh.
That's what we're doing in Alabama is we're trying to define the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
So, and what we're proposing to our legislators is if we don't know what the best interest of the child means, if it's not defined in the code, let's go to the research, the scientific research that we have that can say what's in the best interest of a child.
Yeah.
So, if our lawmakers are going to legislate something that has to deal with heart doctors or cardiologists, they're going to go to the research.
Yeah.
For some reason, they think it's different when it comes to child custody.
Yeah.
But it's got a price tag on it.
Can you talk real quickly? I know we're going to get back in there quickly, but can you talk for grandparents? We have this one lady here. I put out some announcements for grandparents. One lady here, she's a grandmother, and she's also here for her son-in-law. So that's a very unique combination. I've not seen that before, but so many grandparents that get cut off from their grandchildren because of unjust, unfair custody orders, among other reasons. What are your thoughts about grandparents and this whole thing?
Well, we can look at how important grandparents are. There's more grandparents now than ever raising their grandchildren. But grandparents don't have rights from arguably what they should have. The problem is this, and the problem that we run into from a legal perspective is if a grandparent under the law is no different than you or I. It's a third party.
Right.
So grandparents don't have any standing as family members to come in. They're weighed against anybody else who's not a biological parent.
What about blood rights? Because could that be considered an inalienable right, a human right of some sort?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it is.
okay.
But you look at some of the healthiest kids have good relationships with both parents and, the sets of grandparents.
Yeah.
That extended family support is extremely important. But that's
Yeah.
not something that we're focusing on, unfortunately.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for all that you do. I was so amazed, and so proud to meet you. I think you're just outstanding. I'm one of your big, I don't know if I'm one of your biggest fans, but I am a fan. Because
She learned in DC that she is literally a celebrity.
Yeah.
She doesn't like it, but it's the truth.
it is the truth. We love you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
we do need the speakers, and we're.
Yeah,
if you
I know.
want to, no, I just